Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans. Welcome to MFSN The Hub's Fantasy Baseball Waiver Wire Show every Thursday at 4:45 p.m. Eastern, 1:45 p.m. Pacific. We always keep the time zones the same because we live in the world. And I am here not with Casey Vlad to the Bone Scheinwald. He's out again another week, but I have here with me one of my all-time favorites, Ross the Boss.
Hey, everybody, I'm Ross the Boss, and I want to talk baseball waiver wire with you, cowboy. And before we get started, I want to tell you something about people don't take fantasy sports seriously. Tommy Pham of the Cincinnati Reds, before a game last week, had this heated argument from 2020 about fantasy football. And he was wrong, actually. I know the whole story. I don't have time to get into it. And he went up to Jock Peterson before the game, who plays for the Giants, slapped him across the face because of a fantasy football discrepancy that he had from 2 years ago. So what does that tell you? If you have passion about something, it's great. It's a great feeling to play fantasy sports. And I don't agree with slapping somebody, but if that takes over your life so much that you'll get suspended for 3 games and miss pay because of fantasy sports, I salute you.
All right, so what this tells me is Ross is not pro-slapping, which is good.
But it's a trigger. I'm going to see this as a trigger for Tommy Pham, that fantasy sports, if he loses, something bad happens.
Were they in a league together or something? What happened?
They were in a fantasy football league together. And basically, really quick, they had a IR situation, injury reserve, that Jock decided to put some COVID guys, which was legal because it's up to the commissioner. And both you and I have been commissioners, and they made it so if you have COVID, you can put somebody in the IR. So Jock put somebody in the IR because he had COVID. And Jock thought, and Tommy thought that was illegal. So all being told, the commissioner should have made it more clear, but it was legal. He did nothing wrong.
Imagine that, Jock Peterson just doing something totally legal in a fantasy sports.
But
league.
And
2 years later,
it's passion, Dan. It's passion. You get passionate about something, I salute you.
Okay, well, listen. The viewers here are passionate about this year's fantasy baseball season.
I got you there, right? I switched it up on you.
You messed me up.
And we can answer questions about dynasty if you want to have a dynasty question about anything about
anything baseball related.
Trades, I'm great with trades. If you want to drop somebody on the fence about it, text us, or don't even text us. Just right now, type in and we'll answer the question for you.
Right here. Okay, guys, let's get to it's just me and you. Casey's not here.
Yeah,
it's the three of us. Okay, we're going to go through, just pick your top 4 pickups. Hitters, pitchers, it doesn't matter what position. If you had to name 4, who would they be?
Okay, I'm going to name 4, but I'm not going to do any preamble. I'm going to do the preamble later in the show when we get to their position. So my top 4, Harold Castro, David Peralta, who's the cover boy, Tyrone Taylor, and William Contreras. All 4 of those guys I like as my top 4 pickups, and I'll tell you more later in the show.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you my top 4.
These better be good. I swear they better be good. What is it?
You think they're not going to be good? Are you serious? Okay, listen.
Are you serious?
Okay, this is the guy that I teased in the the previews is MJ Melendez. This guy is a catcher, a very talented catcher. Salvador Perez, yes, he's back, but first of all, he's struggling. Second of all, he's having some injury risk issues. Here's the key. Melendez plays in the outfield now, son. His catcher is going to be playing a lot of the time. He's a great, great pickup. I'd be all over him in any league that I can. I own him in the leagues that I can. Another guy that I really like is Max Kepler. We've talked about him before, but he just seems like the kind of guy, he's a post-hype sleeper, breaking out in a big way. And
he had 30 home runs a couple years ago. So he's not
I mean, he's more than a post-type sleeper. He's advanced in years beyond.
No, I agree. I think he's going to go 30 home runs this year. I'm not.
But I think he's legit. And I say this because you look at a lot of guys on the wire, and everyone's like, "Ooh, this guy's the hot pickup." And I don't mean any disrespect by this, Ross, but I feel like David Peralta is one of those guys that he's hitting hot right now. And he's been a good hitter in the past, but he hasn't been for so long that I'm just a little skeptical.
He's a streaker. I'll explain it when we get to outfielders. You're going too fast.
This is great. I got him all riled up. All right. Now, going to pitchers. To me, very obvious pickup for top pitcher for me is Aaron Ashby. The guy is just...
He's 72%, so keep
Is he up
going.
to 72%? Did I get... Okay, I got the
Yeah,
wrong.
I mean, I don't know what you're looking at, but if you want to pick up a guy, he's great, but he's not available in my league. But maybe yours.
Well, here's the thing, Ross. He's actually available in 58% of leagues, so I'm right.
Oh, you're right again.
Booyah!
I was probably
All
looking
right,
at somebody else. Okay, keep going.
Guys. Listen, you're gonna besmirch our good name. I'm not going to recommend somebody that's not a good recommend. This guy's only 58% rostered, and he is just dominating in the last.
I was looking at Alan Ashby. I'm sorry, but keep going.
Yes. So that's a
his
totally different.
Retired for years, but keep
Aaron
going.
Ashby. He's been retired for years. Aaron Ashby, though, pitching on a great Milwaukee team, striking out a ton of batters. His control's looking pretty good.
And Peralta's out for at least 3 months. I mean, he's taking Peralta's spot, and he's legit. This guy.
Yep, absolutely. He's not losing that anytime soon.
No.
We're going to get to a comment from Chris Atwater in a second, but my fourth guy is Tanner Rainey. He's still a closer. I know he's on a terrible team, but he's got a stranglehold on that, and he's pitching well. He's 36% rostered. It's that probably speaks to some leagues that either don't have saves or just don't value saves that much, and that's why his numbers are suppressed. But still, 36% seems a little low. Okay, let's get to interesting. Chris says of the Jock Peterson, who was the guy who slapped him? Tommy Pham, right?
Tommy Pham.
That league, apparently, the commissioner of that league was Mike Trout.
Oh, I wish I was in that league. Can you imagine you, me, and Atwater in that league together? That'd be unbelievable. It'd be great.
It would. Mike Trout would be like, "Who you guys? Who are you guys?"
Yeah. So I blame Mike Trout. When you have let me just explain something real quick. If you're a commissioner of a league, you got to take control. You and I take control. You took control of that basketball league that one year, and I commend you for that, because it was the first year of COVID. It was a lot of crazy stuff going on, and you took control, and you wrote long emails, which I never read, but I'm sure they were great. But long story short, it's your job as commissioner to make sure all the teams are on the same page, and obviously Tommy Pham was not on the same page because he had no idea what the rules were. So, Chris Atwater, thanks for the info.
Yep. Excellent info. Keep bringing it, Chris. Thank you. All right, Ross, we're going to move to catchers right away. I want you to give me your top pickup at catcher. Of course, I already said MJ Melendez, but if you want to agree with me on that,
I'm just curious. I don't have him on my list because we talked about him a lot, but MJ, what's his percentage at now?
MJ Melendez is only 35% rostered.
I mean, we talked about him. I hate beating the same drum, but MJ I love. I'm not going to – he's on my list just because of that, but – yes, I agree with you with him. Alejandro Kirk of the Toronto Blue Jays. This guy for the season, not the past 2 weeks. I always say the past 2 weeks. 304, 3 home runs. He's been turning it up for the month of May. He hit 324. I know they have David Jansen there too as their catcher, but this guy will DH. This guy's been destroying the ball. I suggest if you need a catcher and you get some good numbers. Kirk's been on fire. He's a streak. I think he's a streaker. I don't think he's going to hit 300 for the year between us two, but we'll see what happens. William Contreras of the Atlanta Braves is a Contreras that plays for the Cubs. Don't mix them up. Contreras is another guy that plays catcher, but he also DHs. For the past 2 weeks, he's hitting 344, 3 home runs, 7 RBIs, not too bad. Another guy that I had last year that I didn't pick up this year, but he's been on a tear the past 2 weeks, Christian Vasquez of the Boston Red Sox. And you're saying, why do you like him so much? I don't know, Dan.
Maybe it's because he's ranked 36th over the last 2 weeks.
I don't know. The past 2 weeks, isn't he 419? I mean, he's been killing the ball the past 2 weeks. He's hitting over 400, 11 RBIs and a home run. So he's another streaker. I don't think he's going to hit 400, please. But I think he's on a hot streak, and the Red Sox are really hitting the ball well right now. So those are my 3 guys that I really like. Catcher's usually the weak position. The weakest position this year in fantasy baseball, you'll be surprised, is third base.
Oh, yeah.
It's the for hitting.
Well, wait, hold on. Is it weaker than catcher? I mean, and it's very weak for third base, but is it actually weaker than catcher?
I did my research, and I read that third base right now is the weakest position. It can change. I mean, it's not like, but yes, it's weaker than catcher. Yes, your answer.
I'm not sure about that. I think catcher is so weak.
Okay, we'll ask Chris Atwater. Chris Atwater is going to get me the answer right now. He's our
Chris, give us the answer. When people name what's the weakest position, I don't even think they consider catcher because they just assume it. But I will say this: Christian Vasquez was next on my list, other than MJ Melendez.
Who else do you got?
And not only that, I think Christian Vasquez isn't even necessarily, as we call it, a streaker.
Oh.
I think he's somebody you can pick up and trade your starting catcher. you can pick him up and benefit from that. I'm thinking of doing it. I have Wilson Contreras, and in our keeper league, I picked up Vasquez, and I'm eyeballing it. I'm like, listen, I need a closer. I got to deal something that I can value. That's one thing you want to use the waiver wire for. If there's value out there, snap it up and then think about it. How do I make this work? If you can trade your starter and you believe in Christian Vasquez, I think it's worth doing. I don't think it's worth holding them both for very long, which is what I've been doing for the last week. But it's time to figure out, am I going to let it go?
And let me just explain something. This goes with every fantasy sport, okay? Sometimes you have to go against the grain. If you don't go against the grain, and if you don't, you can look at all the sheets and all the ratings and power and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. Sometimes you got to take chances. And when you take those chances, you will win your league. If you go with the flow and just go with the herd, you're going to finish maybe 4th or 5th, maybe make the playoffs. I don't know. But you like you're saying, I like your thinking. I like you dumping Wilson Contreras and picking up Vasquez as a start. It's great.
Yeah, and partly it's because I think Contreras has been playing a little bit above the level that he's going to keep up. So
yep.
I can get some value there. All right, let's move to first base. We know first base is a pretty deep position, but there's still some guys out there that are really valuable. I want you to start us off, Ross. Who would you take?
So, Christian Walker, I don't think he's Jewish with the name Christian, but I could be wrong.
Ross makes this joke every week.
I use it every week. I love it's funny when I meet people in the street and they say, "Oh, my name's Christian." I said, "Are you Jewish?" And they look at me like I'm crazy. It's a joke.
Do you do this when you meet somebody named Chaim?
If I meet somebody named Shlomo, I say, "Are you Christian?"
Yes.
Yes, I'm very obnoxious. If you guys can't tell, the month of May, Christian Walker has hit 255. He has, I believe, 7 home runs. I mean, he's been killing the ball. He has 13 home runs for the year. He's again, power. He's getting better in average. I like Christian Walker a lot, and I think Arizona is a team that's heavily improved from last year. Harold Castro, I mentioned him as my top 4 pick. The reason I like this guy so much, he plays like 4 different positions. I mean, this guy is like utility. In the past 2 weeks, he's hitting 370 with 3 home runs. That's not bad. 370? That's
pretty
3
good.
home runs. It's pretty good. He plays in Detroit. The fences are moved in a little bit. So Harold Castro I like, but also the utility factor is huge. Those are my top 2 picks. I like Andrew Vaughn of the White Sox also. He's starting to hit the ball. In the past 2 weeks, he's hitting over 300. I like Andrew a lot right now. And the White Sox are just going to improve throughout the year. So there you go.
Yeah, I also wanted to just echo a certain point that you were making, I think, in the background, which is, a young player like Vaughn, these guys, they can really turn it on. They can make a big difference. There's a big difference between somebody like him and a veteran who seems to be having a good 2 weeks. That guy could, Vaughn, a guy like him could really, boost up your season for a long time. By the way, we have some comments coming in. Chris Atwater again says, catcher for sure. This is about Vasquez, but I have Vasquez and Real Muto, who also has first base eligibility. So, yeah, Real Muto plays at first base. That's great.
Right, but Real Muto's having a horrible year. I mean,
I still believe he'll rebound, but it's hard. It's hard when you're owning somebody like that. Now, Another comment. This is about the third base catcher argument. Third base is also weak, but the person in question is saying they have Rafael Devers on their roster. So, that's a huge advantage.
Again, there's Wiley, there's Devers. I mean, there's exceptions to the rule, of course.
Well, but I think in this year, that's like having, the best tight end, in football. To have Devers at third base when it's such a weak position is great. Here's another question coming in. How much do you like Vinny Pasquantino as a pickup? Young Royals player. Ross, what do you say about that?
I read about him last week when they brought him up. A lot of potential. This guy hits the ball really hard. Velocity when he hits the ball is off the charts. Unbelievable. Young player. It's just, do you want to sit there and watch a Kansas City Royals game because of Vinny? I mean, I wouldn't. But
see, isn't that part of the joy of fantasy football? I mean, fantasy sports. It's like you get to watch. Everything's interesting.
I do like Vinny. He's a young player, and I think his ceiling's really high. If you play in a dynasty league or a keeper league, I would definitely want to pick him up. I don't know about a redraft league. I think there's better players out there, but that's me. But I can't say anything bad about it. I like him a lot. I've seen him play.
I like him a lot. Okay. There's two guys I want to mention before we move on from first base. I've been really on the Juan Yepez train for a while here.
Yeah.
And now he has third base eligibility, so I probably shouldn't be mentioning him here. But because I would likely plug him into a third base spot usually. But look, that's not always true. Look what we were just saying about Rafael Devers. If you happen to have third base, you can pick up Juan Yepez. I think he's got a lot of upside. He's gone through some slumps. Young players are going to do that. You have to recognize that if they have the talent, they're going to start to come around. I'd at least be holding him, if not starting him in a lot of the leagues I have. Another very serviceable guy we talk about a lot, Wilmer Flores. I think you can do a lot worse if you've got an injury and you need somebody to fill in. Again, he's got second base and third base eligibility, so he may be filling in other positions. But if you need some people at first base, he can do that for you too. Let's move to second base, Ross. Tell me who you got.
So Josh Rojas, I mean, he has every position in the infield as eligible. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, every position. So I put him at second just because my second basemen were kind of weak this week. But he's hitting for the past 2 weeks, 353 with 3 home runs. I thought he was just streaking for 1 week. He's streaking for now. It's going on 2 weeks. He's on fire. I mean, if you need a utility guy, if you have a big bench and you need a utility guy when one of you guys gets hurt, like people get hurt or they get COVID or something happens, like Wando Franco is on the deal. I mean, things do happen throughout the year, and to have him on the bench, I think it's a really good idea right now. Romain Urias of Baltimore, he can play second, shortstop, and third. For the past 2 weeks, 294, 3 home runs. He's really hitting the ball. I know it's Baltimore, and they moved their fences back, so home runs are getting hard to hit there now. I don't know. Why would he move the fences out? What's your strategy there? I have no idea.
Well, it seems like the Baltimore pitching staff is doing a lot better there. So
right. But I mean,
it seemed to me that they were basically like, look, let's use our strengths and protect our weaknesses. That's my guess.
Yeah, but chicks love the long ball. You know that, Dan. And people don't want to watch a pitching duel. It's boring. I mean, who wants to sit there and watch 3-1, 2-1, 1-0?
I guess the Orioles are into the dudes. I don't know.
I guess, whatever. So I agree with you with Wilmer. I think Wilmer is the Giants have a really good offensive team, and I think Wilmer's like one of their top hitters, and I agree 100% on that pick.
Okay, we have a question coming in from another Ross. We've seen you here before, Ross. It's good to have you back. He said, should I trade Burns for Trey Turner in a points league?
Points league. So people that don't know what a points league is, you get points for certain hits, for runs, RBIs, home runs. You get points. It varies. Trey Turner that's a great question. I don't know your strengths. I don't know who's going to take Trey's place, but I have Trey above a starting pitcher just because he plays every day and he steals bases. And he also hits home runs, and he's a beast. And I don't like the Dodgers, but I'm just telling you right now, I would not trade. I would want to get Trey Turner on my team. Yes, I would do trade. Whoever gets Trey Turner wins.
I could certainly see that. The only thing I'll say is that the context is going to matter here, Ross. So it's like if you have a dominant pitching staff and you can trade Burns for Trey Turner, then do it. But if you have thin pitching and you got great hitting, and Burns is putting up big numbers for you, don't do that. But Chris Atwater, by the way, says jump on it. And I think so that really is actually 3.
Chris Atwater, that's everybody knows. He's expert in fantasy sports.
I would lean towards it. But
he was best man in my wedding. He ruined my wedding, but I still love him. But Chris Atwater, if he says that's good, I totally appreciate it.
None of this is true. Chris Atwater was at my wedding. Ross hears the words Chris Atwater and thinks wedding. That's what happened. And then he always tells me
it's a trigger. It's a trigger.
Okay. Now Ross had another idea though. He said, "What about trading Verlander for Springer instead? Is that a better trade?"
So Verlander coming great so far. He's pitching great. He's the Verlander of old. His last start wasn't that great, but I'm not a big Springer guy. They paid him all this money to play in Toronto, and he's not really producing that much. Me personally, just because I appreciate Justin Verlander and I think he's a Cy Young candidate this year, I rather have Verlander. I think Springer. There's a lot of guys that can fill that position right now.
I would rather have Verlander and Turner than Burns and Springer.
Yes.
So if that tells you anything, I would jump on that.
Yeah, I mean Springer's very average right now. He's not tearing it up like some players I can name.
Oh, okay. Actually, Ross already did this trade, Verlander for Springer. It's not a bad trade, I don't think, but it just depends on the context. Now, he says he depleted his pitching some when he got rid of Manoah, who I remember talking to you about this before, Ross, about how
I love Manoah. I love Toronto pitchers. Manoah.
But guess who he traded him for?
Who?
I almost said Bill Hader. It's Josh Hader that he traded him for. Don't trade him for Bill Hader. Bill Hader's very funny, but
I love Barry, one of my favorite shows. But yeah, Josh Hader, probably the most elite closer right now in baseball. I have him in a bunch of fantasy leagues, and I want to grow my hair like him, but I can't.
It depends what you needed, but Manoah for Hader makes a lot of sense. Now, Ross says he got rid of Verlander because he was a user of the sticky stuff. So maybe you were afraid he was going to regress in some way, or maybe you're just saying, hey, I don't want that on my team.
He has a really pretty wife, and he throws the ball really hard. I like Verlander. Come on.
All right, we got a little bogged down in second base, but I'm glad we were answering questions. It's always best to be engaged with people. Love it. So I'm just going to mention a couple of guys at second base.
I won't say a word.
This guy, Ross, you're usually the one who has pronunciation issues, but this guy, I don't understand how he pronounces his name. I say Jonathan Schoop. Apparently, it's Scope.
Jonathan. I know how to say it. Jonathan Schoop.
Okay. Then Casey was wrong.
He's actually on fire right now. He's playing great, and that's a really good pickup.
To me, it's a no-brainer pickup, and especially at second base.
And he hits the long ball too. He's good.
Very much so, and he has a track record of doing it. Another guy that I like is Jurickson Profar. Of course, he was very, very top prospect, but he's got first base, second base, and outfield eligibility, and he continues to hit. I think
he plays for the Padres, correct? Yes.
He does play for the Padres. These days, it feels like everybody plays for the Padres. All right, let's go to shortstop, Ross. We're cutting across the diamond.
I can't wait for shortstop. You know why? Because Kyle Farmer plays for the Cincinnati Reds, and he's been on fire. I think he's a streaker. As much I want to say, he's going to hit the past 2 weeks. He's hitting .419, 3 home runs, 9 RBIs. He's been on. I mean, this guy's been on fire, and he did it last year too. I don't know if you remember. Last year we talked about him like in the month of August. He was on fire, so he's on fire again. I said, and he can play third base. Another guy that can play third base. So shortstop, third base, Kyle Farmer, really good pickup. And Gio Urshela, who plays for Minnesota, hitting .364 the past 2 weeks with 2 home runs. He's been tearing the cover off the ball. And ex-Yankee, I love saying that in front of Casey because he's a Yankee fan. But those are my 2 hot pickups for shortstop.
All right. Ross thanked us for that trade analysis. You are welcome, Ross. It's a pleasure. And he says Schoop is a must-add in points league, which I totally agree.
100%, Ross.
Now, he is also pointing out that Kyle Farmer is an ex-Dodger.
Yep, he was drafted by the Dodgers. Yep. That's good little history lesson.
That's good Kyle Farmer trivia. Okay, one guy that I want to mention.
And when he was drafted, he was a catcher. I don't know if Ross knew that.
Oh, see, I actually did know that one. That's why I got him confused with Buck Farmer, although I think Buck Farmer was the third baseman.
Or Buck Naked, my porn name. But go on.
Okay. A guy that I think is definitely worth a pickup, especially now because you're not going to be able to get him later, is Royce Lewis. I know that he's injured. I had him stashed. He came back up from the minors. He was getting set to play outfield. He's getting even more exciting because he's got shortstop eligibility. Sounds like he's going to play maybe some third base. They sent down Juan Miranda, so it looks like he's going to get some time in that as soon as he's healthy. He crashed into a wall. He's got a bone bruise, so he's probably going to be out for 2 or 3 weeks. But this is a guy that you want on your team, especially in any kind of keeper dynasty league. Dynasty is long gone. But even in a keeper league, you got to have this guy stashed, especially now that he has IL status. Even in a redraft league, especially if it's 12 teams or more, this guy can be a difference maker. So I say you pick him up. In fact, when I look at the shortstop options on the wire right now, it's not a very appealing position. And, I have Tim Anderson and I have Royce Lewis. So I was like, oh, my God, who do you pick up? Do you remember who I picked up?
Korea for the Twins is on the DL now, too. I mean, it's like.
Right. So Royce Lewis would be playing big right now.
Yeah.
So I had to pick up somebody at shortstop. Do you remember who I picked up?
Picked up. I have no idea.
Brendan Donovan. What do you think of him?
He's an Irishman. Not much power. He hits for average. St. Louis finds these guys. We talked about this. St. Louis finds these players.
They do,
and they're like gems, all of them, and they never have like a dud. So I like him. He's not going to hit home runs for you, but he's going to get on base, and he'll probably steal some bases for you too. But I do like him.
Yeah, I mean, I he's not who I'm looking to start right now, but I just needed somebody who was solid, and it depends on what you need. You know, I was like, well, I could use a boost. I could use the boost in average because I'm doing well in average, and I want to stay above that fray. Interestingly, sometimes you want to add where you need help, and sometimes you want to add where you're building up a lead.
Right.
We've got a comment that says, I like Farmer too, Ross the boss, and when India comes back, that could be a nice middle infield comment.
2 weeks. India's coming back. I'm excited about that. Rookie of the year last year. Unbelievable player. I hope he's healthy soon.
Yep. Now, another guy, just another keeper league kind of guy, but even in redraft, O'Neal Cruz is a guy to keep your eye on. You scoop him up. And interestingly, he's 25% rostered. Royce Lewis only 17%.
Yeah.
It seems surprising to me. I guess it's because of the injury. People are skittish about it. Let's move to third base, Ross. Who do you got?
So the Nationals brought up Monday Josh H. Smith. I guess there's another Josh Smith. So this is Josh H. Smith.
He's a cousin of Stephen A. No, I'm kidding. That's not true.
He brought him up on Monday. He went 3 for 4 on Monday. Then he played Tuesday, started. Was hit by the pitch twice. I guess the pitchers don't like him. I don't know why. But he's 24 years old. This guy is getting a lot of heat. I mean, the organization loves him, Washington, and he could be the everyday third baseman. So, again, if you're in a dynasty league or a keeper league or something like that, and you want somebody that's going to be playing for a long time, Josh H. Smith, I like a lot. Another guy that I talked about yesterday, I don't know if you guys go on YouTube, but we do these little shorts who you should pick up. Mine was Evan Longoria. He's a dirtbag. You know what a dirtbag is, Dan?
I know nothing about dirtbags.
So dirtbag is the nickname for Long Beach State. He played baseball at Long Beach State. So he's a dirtbag. I'm not saying it's not a bad thing. That's where he plays, Long Beach State.
That's right.
So Evan Longoria, past week, he's hitting .273, 5 home runs, like 9 RBIs. This is just in a week he had 5 home runs. It's unbelievable. So I suggest him also. I know he's old. I know he's like 37, 38 years old. Doesn't matter. I mean, you know, age means nothing anymore. I mean, it's just a number. And another guy I like, I can't say his name, last name is Odar. First name is Rounded Odar.
Roned Odor.
Wono Odor. This guy, the past 2 weeks, 277, 4 home runs, 16 RBIs in 13 games. It's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
He's eligible in different positions. I have him at third base. It's because I think that my third base wasn't that great. But he's available in 90% of the leagues. No one has him. So I think he's a good pickup right now. He's streaking, and he's hitting the ball far.
Okay, this just made me realize, Ross, we should have a game where we collect the names that are the hardest to pronounce and have you try.
Many of them, man.
Would you mind?
I love it.
But Roned Odor is like at the top of it. That's even hard for just anybody. Okay, now going. Chris Atwater has a comment about Royce Lewis. He says Royce Lewis is available in the West Coast Ballers League if you want him. He beat me to the punch and picking him up, but now he's released him because he's injured. Didn't have time to let him stay on the bench. I do want to say this. When you're playing in these leagues, you got to know what your league is. So in the head-to-head league, I'm probably not going to pick him up, Chris, because and part of it's because of the IL guys I already have. We only have 2 IL spots in that league. If we had 4, I might scoop him up, but I can't afford to. I've got injured players that I need to keep on the bench. So right there with you. That's probably why we ended up in the same place with letting him on the waiver wire. Okay, third base options that I have, Christopher Morel. This is a guy he's hitting leadoff with the Cubs, and he's hitting well. 250 averages, it's fine, but 6 stolen bases in the last 14 days and scoring a lot of runs. So it always depends on what you need, but I think he's a good fit. I'm curious what we think about Luis Guillorme. It sounds like I should have let you pronounce that.
Luis Guillorme, no idea. I have no idea how to pronounce it, but go ahead.
Well, he's playing for the Mets now. Right now, he's batting .500. Is that going to continue? Of course not. Yeah. But I just it was interesting. I was going through some comments on one player's comments, and they were like, "Should I pick up this guy or Guillorme?" And I was like, "Who is this guy?"
Guillorme. And the Mets dropped Dominic Smith is now like in AAA. They totally kind of gave up on him. So I think Georg got the call, and he's producing. So
yeah. So listen, I mean, when a relatively young player comes up, you want to take a look at him. I'm not high on him, but I think you could pick him up as a streaker while he's hitting well. I think Ronald Odor is better. I think Ramon Urias is better, and I think Christopher Morel is better. Definitely Evan Longoria, not Eva Longoria. You could pick her up if you want, but actually, you probably
I've heard on my team.
Very hard to pick
Evan, yeah.
As far as I know. Oh, here's another guy that we should mention: Spencer Torkelson. We're getting a Spencer. Torkelson.
I like Spencer. You know where he went to college, right?
Oh, was it ASU?
It was ASU.
I had no idea, but every time you say that, it turns out that way.
First pick in the draft.
So this guy is starting to come around. I'd snatch him up now if you can.
Yeah, he was drafted. He was the number 1 pick. Plays for the Tigers. In college, he was a monster. He's getting used to the major league pitching. He's a great player. Unbelievable.
Okay, let's go outfield, Ross.
Outfield.
Give me a couple that you want to pick.
Let's go Tyrone Taylor. Past 2 weeks, 5 home runs. He's hitting like 272. Only 17 RBIs, 2 weeks. Only. Only. David Peralta, who's our cover boy this week. 356, 3 home runs, 11 RBIs. And another Diamondback. Diamondbacks are like on fire right now with their hitting. They're really hitting the ball well. Trevor Larnach, past 8 games, 364. 3 home runs, 3 doubles. Just been killing the ball. I mean, again, he was on the IR, came off, and he's on fire ever since he got off the injury reserve. So outfield really has a lot of good pickups this week. So I suggest if your outfielders aren't producing, we got some great names for you.
Now, if you were just watching my face, you may have seen me respond to Chris Atwater's latest comment. He says, I was at Sasha Spielberg's wedding and I dove into the pool naked while playing fantasy baseball and drinking Zima. He's a wedding legend, this guy, Chris Atwater. And I will tell you, it was one of the most memorable moments at my wedding. We were watching a Browns game, and he's a Saints fan, and he's cheering me on. And the Browns actually managed to win a game, but we almost got kicked out of the bar because we got so excited. We were running around the pool table, and the guy in charge had absolutely no sense of humor about it. But I do remember the primary thing about that wedding day that I remember of the football game was Chris Atwater leading that charge around the table, and then also our wedding planner saying that the Browns were employing the prevent offense, which I thought was a pretty good joke.
And the Browns, every year people predict them to do really well. And what happens? They don't do well.
Well, okay, but there is an exception to that. A lot of people don't predict them to do well. What they do consistently is not do well.
I can't wait for fantasy football. Guys, if you're watching, make sure you watch our fantasy football stuff. We have some great stuff coming up. And it's going to be a great season. I just can't wait to talk about it.
All right, couple guys to mention in the outfield that we haven't so far. Anthony Santander, I think he's a very solid pickup. Baltimore is actually they've got an underrated lineup, and I know, yes, they pulled the fences back, but they're still putting up decent numbers. I think people make a little too much of the parks in general. Casey is a big park guy, so when we bring him back on next week or the week after, we'll have a conversation about that. But I think Anthony Santander, very solid pickup. A couple weeks back, I read about him somewhere that people were saying, the numbers under the hood were looking good for him. Well, it's translating. He's 77th in Yahoo overall the last 2 weeks. So he's a guy that I'd be looking at. I think it may be time to give Jesus Sanchez another chance. He seems to be coming around, and he was putting up big numbers before. So he'd be somebody I'd take a look at. Anybody else to add, Ross?
No, we're good. We give unbelievable talent at outfield.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable what we're doing.
Unbelievable, man.
I can't believe what we're doing. Okay, let's move to starting pitcher, Ross. Give me a couple of your best ones.
I love Jeffrey Springs. He pitched on Wednesday, 5 innings. He gave up 5 hits, 7 Ks, 2 earned runs on Wednesday. Springs pitches for Tampa Bay. He's one of these guys that was a bullpen guy. Then they made him a starter, and he's really blossoming right now as a starter. So I like Springs a lot. You don't hear about him because he plays in Tampa, but it doesn't matter. Pick him up if you can get him. John Gray of Texas. I mean, this is a total Dan Ratner pickup. 7 innings, 12 Ks in his last start. Plays in Texas. Really tough place to pitch, but this guy's doing it. I like this guy a lot. And then Nick Pavetta.
Pavetta?
Nick Pavetta of the Boston Red Sox, who's actually Canadian. Nick Pavetta, in the past 2 weeks, 2 wins, 3.00 ERA. He started off really bad in April. I'm not denying any of this. but he's been turning it on. The Red Sox have been turning it on, and Nick's their ace now. Chris Sale's not coming back anyway soon. It'll be at least another month. So Nick's the starter. Nick's the number one guy, and he's pitching great. So those are my 3 hot pickups for the week in starting pitching.
All right. A guy that I don't want to steer you guys wrong, but I do think that this is a solid pickup, and I'm just going to call it like I see it.
Who is it?
It's Corey Kluber. You look at his numbers, and they're all blown up from one game. Just one game. And by the way, it keeps happening. The Angels are just destroying pitchers lately. I mean, it happened to Dylan Cease also. They destroyed him. It was them again. If you look at Corey Kluber, his numbers look pretty solid. So
and today the Yankees destroyed Ohtani. I mean, they destroyed.
It happens to the best of pitchers. You got to know it.
Today.
Yeah. You got to know it. So I think he's a guy to stick with. Listen, is he a top of the rotation guy anymore? No, but you're going to need innings eaters at this point. And I think he's a great guy to pick up. Here's another guy that I do like who seems to be pitching very well. He had a very good pedigree coming up. Jameson Taylon. He's been great over the last 2 weeks. Sometimes you got to ride
what's the percentage on him? I thought he's like over 60. He's not over 60.
Oh, actually, you know what? I am wrong about that. I steered you wrong there. He's 75% roster.
Yeah, but still, let's talk about him. He plays for the Yankees. He's been every start. He's been solid. I mean, this guy every time he comes in, just like Perez for the Rangers. I mean, we talked about him a few weeks ago, and now he's over 60%. But he's been money every time he pitches. Unbelievable.
Yep. Now I already mentioned Aaron Ashby, but another guy that I like is I got to make sure I can pronounce this one. Let's see if you can. The young pitcher's phenom. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hunter Green. That's it, Hunter Green. Who can't pronounce that? I don't know.
Hunter Green is the red. It's Rosie Contreras. Do you know about this guy? You should.
I know the name. I haven't seen him pitch yet, but tell me a little about him.
Rosie Contreras. He's got great numbers in the minors, but he's also actually pitched well in the majors when he's been in. And he's up. And actually, Chris Atwater scooped him up in our league, so he knows.
Son of a. Oh yeah.
His strikeout rate is solid. Listen, is he going to get a lot of wins? Probably not, because he's not going to pitch deep into games. But if you need a guy who's going to eat up some innings and give you good innings, I think Rosie Contreras is a great example of that. By the way, we forgot to mention Victor Robles when we talked in the outfield. The reason I'm going to mention him is that Casey talked him up this week in his preview. And why am I talking about Victor Robles? He was an all-world prospect, but he just hasn't delivered. But he is starting to run. So if you need stolen bases,
that's outfield, folks. He does not pitch, but
he does not pitch. I'm sorry for the confusion, but I needed to go back to that. Now, Chris Atwater says, "Do you pick up Tyler O'Neill?" We're going back to outfield here. Will he come back and bat well? Ross?
I mentioned 4 other players that I'd rather have than Tyler O'Neill. So no, I don't pick up Tyler. No, the answer is no.
I probably wouldn't either. I didn't think that Chris pointed out that he's over 60% roster, but he still wanted to know.
So why bring him up?
No, okay, because he's still on the wire. You know, this is the guy you can scoop up.
No, I would not pick him up. I'd rather have Tyrone. I'd rather have Tyrone Taylor from the Milwaukee Brewers than O'Neill. So there you go.
All right. We'll get back to that. But Tyler O'Neill also, he just seemed to have a career year last year, and he hadn't really done a whole lot.
He's done nothing this year. I would wave his ass. You never see him on my team ever again. But keep going.
But still, I mean, it's just crazy.
Okay, enough on Tyler O'Neill. I can't talk about this guy anymore.
Okay, we can't do it anymore. I'll bring him up in 3 minutes. I'm kidding. All right, we'll go to relief pitching. Ross, who are your top pickups? I already mentioned Tanner Rainey. Not sure why he's not owned.
This guy, if he doesn't fit your profile for pitchers, I don't know who does. Spencer Strider of the Atlanta Braves, and your whole thing is it's called the Ratner test. 28 innings, 44 Ks for the year. 28 innings. In his last start, the Braves had all these errors, and they really messed him up because they had errors, and they should have been out of the inning, but instead they had a big inning against them, and because the Braves messed up. But this guy throws really fast and throws smoke. He was a reliever. Now he's a starter. It just depends what they need. But this guy's definitely the future of Atlanta, and I like this guy a lot. And I suggest if he's available in your league, I suggest you bring him up. Aaron Ashby, we talked about. If you need saves, I hate saying this. I'll say it just because I'm a Reds fan, and the Reds have been playing great baseball. Like ever since April, they're playing over 600 baseball. They've been winning. I mean, they're one of the top 5 teams with the records for May. I mean, they were great. Tony Scallion of the Reds, he's their save guy right now. 3 saves in the past 2 weeks.
Okay, his name is Tony Santalan.
Santalan. I can't read my writing.
You can just say Scallion. That's fine.
Tony Santalan, and his ERA for the past 2 weeks, 1.35 with 3 saves. And
I thought you were going to say 1.21 gigawatts.
And he is pitching really well. I don't know how long he can keep it up, but you know what? Just ride the wave and pick him up if you need some saves.
Here's 2 guys, by the way, that both are under 60% roster, probably partly because of each other. But if you pick up Emilio Pagan and Joan Duran, you've got a great situation. If you have the 2 roster spots, I would scoop them up together if they're both available.
They pitch in Minnesota.
But if you had to pick up one, which one would you pick up, Rob?
We talked about Duran last time. I like Duran. He throws 103 miles an hour. You can't hit him.
I'm with you. And I think he's the one who's likely to
I like Duran a lot. It's just with him, it's more about walks versus strikeouts. But he is he's really his arm is top 5 arms in the league. He's that good.
All right, we have a comment coming in. Red Sox starting pitching has been okay, but the bullpen kills all of those starts, so wins are hard to come
Horrible. I mean, talking about...
Terrible. I mean, there's nobody.
And they moved their best bullpen guy as a starter, and it's like the Red Sox bullpen is just a disaster. I mean, I think it's one of the top worst bullpens in the league, maybe second to the Reds. They're very close.
They might be first, and I
mean, the Red Sox, their Achilles heel this year is the bullpen, and it's pretty embarrassing. I mean, the reason the Houston Astros are so good is they have a great bullpen. That's why they're so good. Right. They built their bullpen last year. They traded for everybody, and they kept a lot of the same players, and they're really good. And Houston, to me, if they're winning in the 6th inning, they win the game.
Yep, they can just put it away. Now, this commenter, there was another comment about hoping they can pick up Bednar for the trade deadline, which is interesting.
Bednar for the Pirates, right? I mean,
Bednar is almost certain to get dealt, isn't he?
I mean, he's going to be dealt for sure. We can do a show about who I think is going to be dealt. I mean, I have a good list.
We're probably going to get into that. I'd say probably early July.
We can do near All-Star break, but there'll be a lot of guys, especially the guys that are on contract years that won't be there next year, that they'll probably deal as a rental for 3 months. But Bednar for the Pirates is for sure on my list.
Yeah, we had a comment that Joan Duran was pulled earlier in the game today, and then they ended up losing. Listen, use Duran. All right, now, Ross, I'm going to leave just a tiny little bit of time here. We've got different games that we play here. Chris Atwater, by the way, suggested a game that I think we should maybe think about for next week, which is players that you love to watch live that are on really not great teams. I need to think about that.
But Aaron Judge, the Yankees are horrible. So Aaron Judge, of course.
Oh, yeah.
I like
underrated player on a terrible team. Good job, Ross. But the game that you've been liking to play is you've been asking me basically cut or hold.
It's called keep or dump. We name it every week. Jose Abreu of the White Sox. Every year he has over 100 RBIs, but this year hitting 250, 6 home runs. I think he has like 23 RBIs. But would you keep him? Just mediocrity this year, or you could pick up like a stud guy like Christian Walker or somebody else that we mentioned during our waiver wire segment.
I would never. Well, I shouldn't say never, but I would not cut Jose Abreu for Christian Walker.
Okay, so you would not cut him. I agree. I just think he's so inconsistent. He gets hot, then he gets cold. But there's so many great first basemen out here that could. I would either keep him and trade some big name guy that I also have if I have 2 guys and just bet on him, or I'd trade him for someone else mediocre at a different position. But Cody Bellinger, LA Dodger, former MVP. This year, 212, 5 home runs. But the big stat I like for him this year is he has 6 stolen bases, which is pretty good for him. But what do you do with him? I mean, again, he plays outfield. I think he's eligible at outfield and first base, if I had to guess. Do you keep him or do you?
Well, this is interesting because Chris Atwater and I actually engaged in a trade where I traded Cody Bellinger to him for Carlos Rodon. And, at the time, Bellinger was really hot. Rodon was looking good. Since then, both players have gone down in value. But I don't think you can cut Bellinger.
So you won't. Okay, so
I would definitely not cut him.
This is a redraft league. This has nothing to do with our.
Even in a redraft league, I mean, if you do have really, really small benches, maybe, but I don't think so. Not yet.
Javier Baez. Every young player idolizes Baez. I mean, he's like every Dominican puts him on a pedestal. I get it, but he's hitting like I think 250. He has 3 home runs this year. I mean, what do you do with Baez?
Well, he's probably somebody I'd look to trade. I still wouldn't cut him, not yet. If he continues to really flounder this year, maybe for another month and a half, I'd cut him. But listen, you guys have to take that with a grain of salt because sometimes it is time to cut loose. I could totally see cutting him at this point. I would probably hold him myself, but it looks like Ross would cut him.
I cut him. Last one, Jake Crowensworth of the Padres. He's eligible like 3 different positions. He's hitting a cool 211 with 3 home runs, 17 RBIs. But he had a great year last year. I mean, there's guys on the waiver wire that you could pick up that will produce a lot better than right now. What do you do with Jake?
I cut him. To me, this is the kind of guy to cut. He seemed to have a career year last year. I think some of it was, I mean, he's actually got a pretty good eye in general. But there's a lot of guys that are at least equivalent to him on the wire. This is why I would cut the other guys, but with him I would, because you can find a guy like Jake Cronenworth on the wire.
No, we talked about at least 2 or 3 guys that I'd rather have starting right now than Jake. I just feel San Diego's not a great place to hit the ball. It's the park is not kidder friendly. And again, he's not having a great year at batting 211. I would probably waive him.
I mean, look, my rule of thumb is this person replaceable? If you cut Javier Baez and he starts hitting, he's not replaceable on the wire. That's why I would not let him go right now. Chris Atwater says, I like Baez, and if somebody wants to trade, I'm more than open to it. So now I don't know if that means, Chris, you have Baez or you want to trade for him. I forget. I'll have to check in the league. But these are great debates. I love this segment, Ross. We'll keep it up. Guys, we brought you some great names to pick up. We'll keep it going. We know that to win your league, you got to stay active on the wire, and you're going to have to stay active throughout. Chris brought up a good point about David Bednar and kind of the trade deadline.
We'll talk about that.
That's coming up in coming weeks. We're not quite there yet because teams aren't likely to move on from players yet. But you got to be keeping that in mind. Soon you got to start scooping up the backup relievers and that sort of thing. So we'll get into
another
that
guy that's for sure leaving is Luis Castillo of the Reds. He's gone. See you later. Great job, but the Reds are not going to keep anybody that's going to cost them anything. So
that's right. But
I have a whole list. Don't worry, folks. We'll talk about it when we get closer to the trade.
All right, and keep watching us on YouTube. We're releasing these shorts every week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We give you a player that we think you should pick up, all leading up to the Waiver Wire show. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally. We love talking fantasy sports with you.
Cliff Octane. New flavor. Laser Lemon. Plus 125 milligrams of clean caffeine. No sugar.
25 milligrams of CBD.
Meow